Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Give 'em Heck podcast. I'm Brian. This is your host, Penny. Today, we are going to be talking about some very interesting subjects. However, I want to make something very clear that happened on episode 1. For those of you that watched it on our YouTube, and I believe on Spotify has the video version as well, the intro and outro were not edited in. I have no idea why. When we edited it in the software, it showed both the intro and the outro. Yeah. But for some reason, when it uploaded it, it didn't show it. So it showed us just awkwardly smiling at the camera for 5 seconds. So apologies for that. Hopefully, we got a new editing software up. So hopefully this time, it won't be so awkward. We're learning as we go. So hopefully this next time will be a little bit more entertaining for you all and not so awkward. But anyway, let's get started, shall we?
Okay. Yeah, and like Brian said, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed the first episode. Like we had said, the podcast was not only made for him and I, but maybe you guys will find, something in it that helps you, inspires you, challenges you, wherever you need to go. But it's definitely a learning curve for us.
Yeah.
We're learning as we go, so please forgive us for the little things that you see that maybe you're an expert in this. We are definitely not. And you see things that are like, we would have done that a little different. Again, leave a comment.
I was going to say, yeah, feel free to leave comments or, email us. We encourage criticism, we enjoy that.
I mean, we're learning as we go, like I said. So, but with that, I just want to say, remember that with our disclaimers that we're not doctors, psychologists, or counselors. We're not here to give any psychological or medical advice. We're just simply here to discuss life situations. And you know what, with that, if you guys have anything that you'd like us to discuss, because we haven't been through it all, we're not claiming to, we haven't arrived, but every little thing that we do in life that challenges us and brings us a little closer to our endeavor, for Brian and I, we hope that you find that too. So with that, in our last episode, it was titled Making a Difference versus Being the Difference, and what that exactly looks like. And when I had asked Brian that, he said being the difference was actually the doing, which was the big part. Everybody can make a difference, but you really can be the difference by challenging yourself to maybe do something out of your comfort zone. And this is definitely out of our comfort zone. Right. So although many of us want to move in the direction of being the difference, it's easier than it sounds.
Everything is easy on paper. Putting into action is a whole nother subject.
It is because you can make a plan. You can sit down and write out all your goals and look at the paper and say, that's great. Now what?
Well, it's just like New Year resolutions. People can sit there and say, for this year, I'm going to do this. And lo and behold, nothing changes.
Right. And then the year ends and you're like, I didn't do anything.
I didn't do nothing
on this list. And then you start a new list, right?
Yep.
So when you look at that, about being the difference and it being easier than it sounds, my question to you is, Brian, what do you think are some things that you could do to move in that direction?
Now, you talking about like a particular subject or just in general?
Just in general. Like, what are some things that you would do to make you be the difference? Does you know what I mean?
Well, I think it applies differently for everybody, obviously, but for me personally, one thing that I personally struggle with is trust. It's hard trusting people in today's day and age because it seems like everybody's in it for themselves. You can go in with the best intentions possible, and then lo and behold, somebody either abuses that, abuses the trust that you give them, or they use it to their own advantage. And a lot of times, trust is, again, in my particular case, trusting people is something that I try to do a lot when it comes to being sympathetic and empathetic to people. But, you know, when you've been through as much as I have, you know, and I'm not saying that in the sense that I don't want to trust people.
Right.
It's like you had said in the last episode, you know, being the difference or making the difference. I want to trust. I want to help. But when you've been run through the gutter so many times,
yeah.
you, like I say, you can go with the best intentions.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
because I love that you brought the topic of trust, because it really goes along with where we're going, which is weird because you have no idea what we're talking about today.
Nope.
Because I always ask Brian, do you want to know what our next episode's about? And he always says, nope, we're just gonna go with it.
Go with the flow.
That's what we're doing. And it's weird that he said that, because you'll understand more in a minute as we go. But I always say to people with the trust factor, I trust you until I can't. And it is hard, because trust is huge. It can make or break, you know, relationships, situations, whatever.
Well, you figure, you know, you want to help somebody, you know, you're not just putting that other person in a position where they have to open up to you, but you have to open up to them too.
Yes.
You're both vulnerable.
Oh, yeah.
And putting yourself in that vulnerable position is, like we said last week, getting out of your comfort zone. That can burst your bubble hard, because some people grow up hard. You know what I'm saying? They grow up isolated.
Right.
So when you try to be that open source, it might be easy for you to be open,
right,
but not easy for the other person.
Right.
Or vice versa, or even in the same case with both.
Yeah, and a lot of people, well, I wouldn't say that, not a lot, but with people, like you're saying, that maybe grow up more isolated, I think the thing with that is, and I've learned this lesson the hard way, is, and I've said this to you before too, because of things that you've been through, be careful who you share your heart with. Be careful who you show your tears to, because a lot of people can take advantage of that situation. Sadly, some people, not everybody, not all, that's not what I'm saying, but some people will, when you've opened yourself up to them, to, like you said, being vulnerable, right? And you've cried, you've showed them your heart, you've showed them who you really are. I don't know if they intend to do it. I don't think everybody is out to be malicious, but the intent is always there, that people are good, but some people are not. And maybe it isn't for a good thing. So you've got to be careful who you open up to, who you share your feelings with, and your tears and your heart, because once you're destroyed, it's hard to come back from that.
You could have somebody with the best intentions walk up to you, and you'll just close yourself off.
Yeah, especially if you know that they've done it to you before. You know, you have to really be careful with that.
It also, it goes inside with yourself with not common sense, maybe some sort of intuition. Like, I know some people can read the room better than others, but you know people in your life you can trust, but sometimes you don't. So you really gotta, the way I open myself up to people is I kind of run them through a little bit of a gauntlet where I feed them bits of my emotions.
Okay.
And I see how they react to it. And it's almost like a game. And sometimes, you know, you think, well, why should I have to play the game? Why can't people just trust me? Unfortunately, life is a game.
Right.
You know?
And wouldn't that be nice?
Oh my God.
Wouldn't
yeah.
it be nice if we could just live in that world that you could just trust all the time? But again, it's intention. It's...
Well, you got to figure too, like, when it comes to trust, it plays a big part in, like, marriage too. You know, it's not a 50-50. It's not a 60-40. I would even dare say that it's not even a matter of 100% of a person. You become one. Mm-hmm. You know, you're 100% of one.
Wow.
So it works the same thing with trust in friendships and in hardship. You know, you have to be putting in as much as the other person. And sometimes if another person goes above and beyond, it shows you, like, well, they care.
Right.
you know, and then you can go above and beyond for them too. That builds strong bond.
Right, right. And there are not a lot of people out there, unfortunately, that you can be that person with.
A lot of people value the quantity of friends over quality.
Exactly.
See, I like tight circles. I'm a very small group of friends kind of person, because it's not that having a bunch of friends is a bad thing.
Right.
But when you have like 50 people that you say are your friend, all it takes is that one person to come along and then you're crushed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to discourage anybody from, you know, branching out and getting to know a lot of people. But there's a difference between having a large group of people and then one person that you can always rely on.
Right.
That makes the huge difference.
Oh, yeah. Because I think I have a lot of friends, but I can probably say on one hand that I could count how many really true friends I have. Meaning this, they can be the type of person that I won't see or talk to for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, we either run into each other, you know, out in public or on Facebook or whatever, and it's almost like we just leave off right from where we left off.
You never stop talking.
Yeah, you know, and it's like I seen them yesterday, and it could have been over a year since I've seen them, but you just, nothing changed. It's just the friendship got even better at that moment. But there are not a lot of people like that.
No, there's a lot of people, especially like, again, my own friend group, where I have friends that not necessarily get upset with me, but like if I don't talk to them for a day, they wonder like, is everything okay? Why aren't you talking to me? And it's like, because I'm just living my own life.
I'm living life.
But then I have those other friends, like you said, I'm not saying that it takes this kind of person to be a true friend, but you know, like those friends that I cannot talk to for a week and a half, and then we don't even have to reach out awkwardly. It's more like it's not a hi, how are you? You know, mundane. It's not a mundane interaction. It's almost like a, hey, what's going on? What have you been up to? You know, you know, there's genuine wondering of what's been going on.
And I think those types of people are not only because you have that special bond with that person, but I think it's because you know you can trust that person, but also you have that type of relationship, that type of friendship, that they've seen you through thick, they've seen you through thin, they've seen you at your worst, they've seen you at your best. They don't judge you. You know they won't judge you. They accept you for your faults. They accept you for the fact that, you know what, you're human. They know you're human because they're human. They know they make mistakes, and they know you're going to make mistakes, but they accept you through all of it. And I think that's what makes those types of relationships really special, because you don't have to explain yourself to them.
Yeah.
They know that you know that when you've messed up, it's still okay. And you know, that's what really makes those relationships, friendships, really valuable, because they're hard to find. And I like the reason that you said that, Brian, because we're talking about being the difference instead of making a difference. And the question is how do you move in that direction? And that's my question to you, is how do we move in that direction? And you kind of answered that because of the trust factor, the relationship issue. That's the thing of moving from one direction into being the difference, meaning this. A lot of it does have to do with feelings. Moving in that direction. And I'll explain why. And that's my topic today, is dealing with feelings versus controlling your emotions.
Okay.
And that's why when you started talking about trust, I'm like, did he read my notes? Did he read my notes? Because that is the title of what we're dealing today, is dealing with feelings versus controlling your emotions, because that's where I think a lot of people fail in not being the difference, of moving in that direction. Again, it's easier than it sounds, but I think it is dealing with feelings and emotions because, of course, we all have feelings and we all have emotions. So I'm going to ask you this, Brian, so we can move on with that part of it is, so what do you think the difference is between feelings and emotions?
The way I interpret them, and I'm sure everybody has their own take on it, but my take, feelings versus emotions. To me, feelings are something that you have in that moment. It's like, you hit your arm on the side of a table, you feel hurt, you feel the pain of that. It's momentary, but then your emotions are the reaction to it.
Yes.
Like you can have the emotion of anger. You can have the emotion of sadness. You can have the emotion of regret. So for me, feelings are temporary. They're in the moment. Emotions are something that carry on as a result.
Right. They're deeper.
They're deeper.
Do you think there's a fine line?
Circumstantial, yeah. I think some situations can lead to stronger feelings and emotions and, how you react to them.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, like again, it depends on what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If it's emotional feelings, which goes inside with that, you
Right.
know, they feed off of each other,
Right.
and they can say who you are as a person and how you deal with a situation.
Absolutely. And I think that's a lot of times is what keeps people from being the difference and moving in that direction, because feelings and emotions, let's be honest, control us a lot.
Well, it's like it's like loss, losing somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody reacts to it differently.
Yep. Yeah.
The emotions behind it, people can react in many different ways.
Yeah. And finding a way to move on from that.
And it even goes even deeper how other people see that person react to it.
Absolutely.
Because, some people, like my case, for example, I don't like to think that I'm made of stone, but I think in a lot of very high stress situations, I'm very calm, and some people have gotten mad at me for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not anybody close, thank God, but like some people have seen me and have been like, how can you handle this so...
I've seen you do it, and it's amazing to me.
Yeah, like, how can you handle this, situation so differently than everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I really can't give you an answer.
Does it help you deal with the situation better because you're like that?
Sometimes it helps to be stoic. Because like the way I envision myself and the way that I've had other people explain it to me, because it's not, other people have seen it outside of the immediate family and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But when people go through a hard time, people will come to me as like, a foundation.
Oh, yeah. You're a rock.
Yeah. A place where people who are unstable can gain stability.
But you're very logical.
I try to be.
Yeah, I think you, which is good. You think things through. You're very logical.
I like to look at the bigger picture.
You do.
I don't like to think in the moment,
Yeah.
because the moment
You think long term.
being in the moment is very temporary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every moment changes.
Yeah.
So you think long term, you think the sun will always come up after the storm.
Yeah.
I don't think about the storm. I think about how to handle it, but I don't put myself in it thinking that there's no way I can get out of it.
Well, and that's what gets you through. Because if you don't think that way, you will drown in the storm. And you can really keep yourself in a place where your feelings, again, versus emotions, your feelings will keep you there. Your emotions will determine where you go. I think there's a very fine line, but where I see the fine line is, like I said, feelings will keep you there. Emotions are something that you can help move you along, meaning this. They always say keep a check on your emotions. Again, we talked about, Nana's, my mom's death last week. And when you had said that the anger was changing me, I looked at the situation after that in a bigger picture, because you helped me to see it in a bigger light. Was I always thought, how can I help other people? How could I ever help other people? Like my cousin who said, maybe what you're going through will help others. And I thought, how can I help others when I can't even help myself? I am a mess right now. This was the furthest thing from thinking that I could ever help anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized, because of the difference between feelings and emotions, I had to get past my feelings and realize that, okay, it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel certain ways, because everybody handles things differently, and the way you feel is the way you feel. I hate when people say you shouldn't feel that way. Well, you're not a robot. You can't turn your feelings off. And everybody feels differently about different situations. It's your emotions, I think, that is the determining factor. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing that's either going to make you, break you, leave you, or keep you in a certain situation to be able to move on. So with that being said, I think that a lot of times we don't move in the direction of being the difference, because not only are we worried about what we feel, but about how others feel about us.
I've seen a lot of that personally, where people will shut themselves off for the sake of somebody else. Because sometimes seeing a friend break down can break them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or, break you. If you see a friend break down, it can break you, is what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
English is hard. So, and my thing to that is, because I've told people like this, my friends who've been in these situations, like one of my friends actually just last week had something bad happen to them, and they shut themselves off for the sake of somebody else. Because this other person is very happy-go-lucky, but they're also very, let's just say, sensitive. Like no matter if you say anything negative in any way, shape, or form, it will crash their whole world.
Oh my.
Very, very sheltered life, from what I can tell. It's not healthy.
It isn't healthy.
But I told this friend who was dealing with the heartache, I was like, why are you torturing yourself for the sake of them?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I don't want to hurt them. And I said, you're the one hurting.
But you're not helping them.
Yeah,
you're hurting yourself, and you're hurting them, really, by being that person.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes in with what I said at the beginning of this, when I was like, it takes two people to feed off of each other.
Right.
If you're sacrificing your own feelings and emotions for somebody else,
mm-hmm.
you're not living at that point.
No, and you have to learn how to feel that way and separate those things, because you either will live to exist or exist to live.
That's, yeah.
And there's a big difference. Are you living or are you existing? And there is a huge difference. But I have a hard time, because I had to deal with this, of not moving on because we're worried about how other people feel about us. The honesty in this is that in order to move on, one thing I've learned is you don't need the approval of other people. Because you know what? Where they go in their life and where they choose to be cannot be the determining factor for you.
And see, that brings up a good point to this podcast, is that we might be talking about certain people, but in a sense, we're talking to all of you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You all deal with feelings and emotions differently.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that in the sense of like, think only for yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to put yourself first before everybody else. Yeah. Because like you just said earlier, how are you going to help other people if you can't even help yourself?
Exactly.
You're not being prideful.
No.
When you put yourself above somebody else. Mm-mm. You're healing yourself.
Right.
You're putting yourself in a position where you can be the difference.
There it is. So feelings and emotions, at the end of the day, do they matter? I think they kind of do. And the thing is at the end of the day, in order for, like you just said, Brian, to help others, you have to find a way to help yourself. It's not selfish.
It's like one of my friends told me a while back. It's like the most important person in your life is yourself.
It is. Because you know what? At the end of the day, and it does sound selfish when I say this, but it's not. Nobody else is going to look after you but you.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that other people don't want to.
No.
But you have to be willing to let them in.
Right. But if you can't help yourself, are you going to let anybody in? No, because you've put that wall up, not only for yourself, but for others. Others can't help you if you've already put that wall up. And it's a lot to deal with. It really is. And that's why I said at the beginning of the podcast that we have not arrived. But the podcast was an example of what we're talking about today, right? I knew for myself, maybe for you, Brian, that in order for me to help others, because that's why we wanted to start this podcast, that we need an outlet to heal too. And it's a little chunk at a time. You know, you're not going to get up tomorrow morning and everything's just going to be all better. It's not. Because tomorrow there's going to be something else to deal with. But it's how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to let your feelings determine the outcome? Or are you going to get a check on your emotions? Are you going to need the approval of others? Or are you just going to say, this is what I need to do because this is what's best? Does that make sense?
And it says a lot about you as a person when you finally decide to stand up and say no more.
Absolutely. Because who are you destroying by not moving on?
Yourself.
You are, for one.
But in my experience too, and this is, something that happens quite frequently from what I've seen, is that if a person is unwilling to move themselves, like being stuck in that hole, mm-hmm. or they keep digging the hole, then it becomes a tax on the person who wants to help you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because now
Because now you're just pushing a boulder up a hill that keeps rolling back down.
Yeah, because now you're dealing with regret.
It's like one of my, don't mean to cut you off, but one of my friends told me that sometimes you just got to let the person keep digging.
Yeah.
And it's not because you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But how, like you said earlier, how can you help somebody if they're not willing to help themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a person hitting rock bottom to finally realize that they need
enough.
That they need to change.
It's been enough.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, everybody deals with it differently. If you haven't hit that point yet, don't be ashamed of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It could be a multitude of reasons why you're at that place.
Yep.
But sometimes hitting rock bottom has to be the option.
Yeah. It's when you've had enough for you. And it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to say, you know what, it can't be this way for me anymore because it's not good for me and it's not healthy. It may even come to that point where physically, mentally, and emotionally for you, it's not healthy. So maybe it means breaking ties. I don't know. Whatever that means is what it means.
Hitting rock bottom can mean many different things for many
things.
different people.
But in this podcast, because of the hope, encouragement, and change that we built this podcast around, that is the thing that we're trying to always drill, is that there is always hope. We hope that we're encouraging you, and we want you to change if you need to, because we're changing with you.
Yeah.
We're trying to find the encouragement and the hope and the change in this too. We're in it with you.
So many things are coming to me as we're talking about it, and it's like I was talking to one of my friends about it, and they said they just felt like they were hitting a wall.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you have two options. You can either let that wall stop you, or you can take a few steps back and ram through that wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they literally stood there silent for a few seconds because it's like nobody has ever told them that. They were almost expecting me to be like, well, that's just life.
Is it though?
Only if you let it.
Only if you let it. Exactly.
You have more control than you think you do. Just
do.
because your world can come crashing down around you all at once, mm-hmm. but you're the one who has the power to get up and keep walking.
Yep.
And then when you reach that point where you can't walk no more, that's when you bring somebody else to walk with you.
Right. Support is very important, but you want the right support around you. You do. And I know that can be hard to find, but you do want that support that's good for you around you. And that is where the difference comes, is that at that point you can realize in your life that, you know what, you don't need the approval of other people to change. If you feel you're at a place where it's time, whatever that looks like, and you know what, it might be a small step. But a small step every day will eventually be miles ahead. And sometimes that's exactly how it has to be. You know, everybody's journey is different.
Any step is progress.
Exactly. And it kind of takes me to our next part in this, is that when you do change, whatever that looks like, some of those things in your changing parts of your life, again, whatever that looks like, might look like the fact that you have to feel like you have to take a risk. For example, I know like Papa, my dad, and he's passed away now too. I really miss him because he always had such good insight, and I think that's where you get it, is he was the type of person I could sit and talk to, and he would never judge me. He would never tell me exactly what to do, but he would always give me really good advice. But one thing he would always tell me is, Penny, don't ever be scared to take the risk, because you're never going to know if you don't. He says, what will you regret more? The fact that you never took it, or the fact that you did it and it didn't work out?
A lot of people can learn from experience. Even if it's a bad experience, you can learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we said last week, you know, people don't want to get out of their bubbles. But
no, it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable. But sometimes getting out of your bubble,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be as bad as you think it is.
And it
Situations
may not be.
are only as bad as you make them.
Right, exactly. And that risk may be a little painful at first, but it might change your world to the point where you'll look back and say, you know what, I'm glad I did that. That was the best thing I could have ever done.
It's like even me. I've lived through quite a bit of bad situations, but I can honestly sit here and tell you I have no regrets, because it shaped me into the man I am today.
There you are. Yeah, that's good. And risks are something that have to be thought up and decided by you individually for your situation and where you're at. Because maybe the risks that I'd be willing to take are not what you're willing to take. Maybe they're good for you, but they wouldn't be good for me. Mm-hmm. So it really just depends on where you're at. So I think it's important to find out what moves you. You know, what is the thing that drives you? What will make you a better person to yourself and others? And who knows, maybe it will not only make you happier, but it'll help you to heal. You'll find yourself along the way. And in that, you'll find that change that maybe one day you'll look back and say, that was the best thing I ever did. Yeah, it was hard, and there could have been hurtful moments in the time, but again, you have to do what's best for you. And you don't need the approval of other people. It doesn't matter. They're not where you are. That's the big thing. They are not where you are at. And they may not fully understand why you're doing what you're doing. It's okay. They don't need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because at the end of the day, this is for you. It's for you to do what you need to do.
Yeah, if the other person doesn't understand it, it has to be okay.
It has to be okay.
Yeah, you can't sit there and be like, how can I make them understand?
Sometimes you can't.
Sometimes you can't.
Sometimes
you can't break through, because like we said earlier, everybody's going through different things at different points in their lives.
Yep.
Maybe that person just doesn't understand because they haven't been there yet, and that's okay.
Yeah, and not everybody handles that situation the same. Like I have a couple of friends I'm thinking of right now that have lost a parent, just like, you know, I've lost both my parents now. And I look at them and they've handled their situation of their losses much different than I did. And they brought themselves through it to the person that they are today much differently than I did. Is that okay? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because if you sit there and look at them and be like, how come you didn't react a certain way? Who's the bad person then?
No, because and it's not even really about that, right? It's just about you finding a way to get yourself through it. And support is important. whatever that looks like. But you don't need people's approval. However you feel is how you feel. Your emotions can dictate things, but you need to keep a check on those, and then find a way to, whatever that desire is in you, to find your purpose, find it and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, any thoughts?
No, I think we got pretty much everything covered. We want to really emphasize the fact that, we're here to help bring things into perspective for everybody.
Yeah.
We want you all to really take a self-reflection,
That's
really see what could be done differently with just the few topics that we've touched on in the past 2 episodes.
Yeah.
To really see, going through bad things is okay.
Yep.
And that you'll be okay.
Yep.
And, you always have the choice.
Yep. Yep. And change is okay. There's always hope. And don't blame yourself, because you can't blame yourself for what others do or don't do.
Yeah.
You can't.
Can't even blame yourself for how you feel.
No, because those are true feelings. You can't shut your feelings off. It's just the way it is. Yeah. So I want to leave you with a quote. I found this the other day and I thought, wow, this would be great for our podcast today. It was by H. Jackson Brown Jr. I don't know who that is. I just seen the quote, and it says, "Be bold and courageous. When you look back on your life, you'll regret the things you didn't do more than the ones that you did."
Mm.
And
Wow.
being bold and courageous, it's hard sometimes. It's hard to pick yourself up, but you have to find that thing that drives you every morning and says, no, this is for me. I have to do this for me. So, and again, we want your comments. If there's anything that you guys want to throw out to us to, let us know about your life experiences. If there's something that you want to talk about, if you want to let us know how you think we're doing, what we could improve on, whatever, feel free to leave those comments.
Yeah, definitely. We have our podcast going up on several different platforms. The video versions, I believe it's on Spotify as well.
Yeah.
But YouTube definitely. So feel free to drop by YouTube if you're listening to the audio version of this. You can drop by on our YouTube channel. It's the exact same as same name as it is everywhere else. Give them heck.
Yep.
You'll see it.
Yep.
Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff.
Yes, like, share, subscribe, turn on the notifications so that you'll know when the next episode is coming up. And as always, we have our email at giveemheck. It's giveemheck@gmail.com.
Yeah. It'll be in the description as well.
Yep. So I hope that you guys glean something out of this today. Always know that it's always our best interest to bring you our insight, but never to tell you what to do or not to do. We want to be respectful of where you're at and just, again, bring you hope and encouragement that you can change and that everything it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for today.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.